This week on Planet Cruise Weekly, something very exciting. It's the first in a new series of destination specials. And this week we're going to be looking at the beautiful Baltic. See you in a second. Well, it's episode 22 of Planet Cruise Weekly. Thank you very much for joining myself, Keith, and the wonderful Mr. Glenn Wallace. This week is something a little bit different, very exciting. One of the big feedbacks you've been giving us is wanting more ports, more port info, and for us to start covering certain areas, Glenn.
I think it's something I'd be very keen to sort of push with the show, especially with my background being an ex-tours manager. I really wanted to try and focus a little bit on more some of the ports of call, and this is what we're going to do today, the Baltics. It's one of my favourites.
Now, one of the things that you should notice as well is the Baltic is very often ignored because most British holidaymakers have this fascination with heading south towards the sun, and of course the Baltic is technically up north. But do not ignore it because it's as accessible as the Mediterranean. In fact, you can cruise out there with a lot of cruise lines from around the UK, or you can even fly cruise and do a quick 90-minute flight over to Copenhagen or Warnemünde. So it's very, very, very accessible. Plus the season. Now this is important. It runs from May through to September. June, in fact, is the best time to visit St. Petersburg. It's part of what they call the White Nights, where it's daylight for I think it's 21 hours of the day. It's quite incredible. And temperatures are better than you might think. And this is what I said about not going that's kind of runaway down south but heading north, because the averages are around 27 to 28 degrees from June through to September. That's quite nice, isn't it?
Nice, isn't it?
I know, I've been sunburnt in St. Petersburg a few times.
You never want to be sunburnt in the Baltics.
You never want to be sunburnt. There we go. Some more great tips, along with Glenn's sunburnt in the Baltics, is to watch out for currency changes. Now this can be a big issue on a Baltic Sea cruise, and that's because you could be dealing with the British pound, the Danish kroner, the Norwegian kroner, the Swedish kroner, the Russian ruble, as well as the euro, which is used by like Finland, Germany, Latvia and Estonia. So there's a lot of currency going on. Now you can use dollars in most of the countries, but you will get change in local currency, which of course is pretty useless once you've left that port if you're not going back there. So another good way around this is to get a credit card that's got good international fees and maybe use that.
The other thing as well, pace yourself. I mentioned before that a Baltic cruise is really, really intensive. And again, being from an old tours background, what I always used to say to my clients on board the ship is the money you've got for excursions and what you really is St. Petersburg. That's going to be your highlight. Plan your time there because you might be there for 2 or 3 days and literally out all day. And then from there, almost sort of circle it out from there. So maybe take it easy the day before, you might want to take it easy after St. Petersburg. A lot of the other places you can just walk around and do your own thing. But St. Petersburg, which we'll tell you about later, is very port intensive. So plan that first and then work everything else around that.
And the other big bit of important planning for a Baltic cruise is also how you dress. And I'm not talking about whether you wear your kitten heels and your latest handbags, Glenn. We're more referring to the fact that you need to bring sensible shoes and probably thick socks as well, because there's a lot of cobbled streets.
Always go well with your flip-flops.
They do. So there's a lot of walking involved around some of these gorgeous historic towns. And also bring lots of layers, because the weather can be changeable out there. Although it's got a good general temperature, it can be quite changeable as it is here in the UK. So layers is the way forward. Right, what we're going to do now is we're going to pick our top 5 Baltic ports. I'm going to give you some highlights and some advice. So the first of the ports we're going to look at is Warnemünde for Berlin. Now, a little factoid, because we're going to start each of these kind of locations.
How did I know we
were
going to have a factoid in it?
I love the factoids, Glenn. You live for these. I know you write them down secretly and you go away with them. Apparently 127 tons of sausage is consumed every day in Berlin.
What, per person?
That's
the whole population?
the whole of Berlin.
The whole of
127 tonnes per person.
I'd love to know the person that actually makes up them statistics.
Me?
What a load of old rubbish.
Okay, now you actually dock in Warnemünde, and this is actually a very popular German holiday spot. You can spend the day lounging on the sands, or maybe flying a kite, or sitting in one of the stand clubs, which is big wicker chairs, or maybe you can head out to a lighthouse for views over the Baltic Sea, or go to St. Mary's Church, where there's the world's oldest astronomical clock. So it's quite a nice place just in itself. But the main, in a sense, attraction is not just that sausage to eat, but it's Berlin itself.
Now, Berlin is the highlight, and again, not the cheapest tour, because it's going to be probably about a 12-hour excursion on this one, so you're literally in Berlin all day. Now, if you're going to go to Berlin, a couple of ways of doing it. One, you can take the train. Just be careful taking the train into Berlin. It's still going to take you 3 hours. We had clients a couple of years ago that did the train. They missed the last one back and had to get a taxi back to the port. It was over 400 euros. So just be careful with that. My advice when you're going that far away from the ship would probably be to take one of the tours. Now the tours, they vary, you know, they all have different itineraries, but then when you get in there yourself, you visit Brandenburg Gate. One of the highlights was going actually to see obviously where the Berlin Wall was and Checkpoint Charlie. It's become quite commercialised now, but you get to see where the Russian and the American standoff was, and you've actually got all the old pictures there, black and white pictures, to see what it was like there where you're actually standing now.
There's the history of the escapes as well, isn't there?
Oh, it's superb.
Really, really good fun.
And again, you've got a couple of other chances to actually, one, stand across the actual piece of where the wall was, so you can actually be standing east and west. And they have still got a section of the Berlin Wall up. It's quite eerie, it's quite scary how it was only a few years ago.
So port number 2 in our round the Baltic with Keith and Glenn is Copenhagen. According to the World Happiness Report of 2013, Glenn, Copenhagen is the happiest city in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
There we go. And that's why so many people want to live there. Now, Copenhagen is known as the Venice of the North, or a city of spires, and more people walk than drive. It's a really beautiful, mainly cycling city, one of the best cycling cities in the world, and it's got some really delightful architecture. One of the main highlights that people will flood to or be aware of is a place called Tivoli Gardens. It's the second oldest amusement arcade, if you like, in the world, or amusement park. It's got some really old school rides, including a century-old roller coaster, which sounds quite frightening, and these beautiful flowering gardens and kind of street performers and outdoor cafes. The other big draw that people will remember and be aware of is The Little Mermaid. I know you're a big fan, particularly the film.
Oh yes, one of my favourites. Little Mermaid, unveiled in 1913. It was a gift from the Danish brewer Cole Jacobsen to the city of Copenhagen. It's a small sculpture just along from the port area. It's made of bronze and granite, and it was inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. But it gets busy down there, doesn't it?
It does get busy, and I don't know, Glenn, when I went down I was a little bit underwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small statue, it's just a famous statue in that city, so that's what everyone wants to go and see.
If you really want to go and see it, go and see it, but there are it's a bit out of the way, and it may take you away from doing other better things, is my point on that one. Now, the other great thing that you must go to is go and explore Nijhaven. It's the old harbour area. It was home to Hans Christian Andersen, of course, the magical fairy tale writer. It's a 17th century waterfront district. It's got lots of restaurants and townhouses, great place to sit.
Pastel colour buildings, isn't it? It's stunning down there, really.
Now, it's also known as the City of Castles, isn't it, Glenn? What are your favourites?
We've got the Kronborg Castle. This is the most famous of the Danish castles. It was set in Shakespeare's Hamlet. We've also got the Fredensborg Castle as well. This is a Baroque palace, and again, stunning gardens there as well, and absolutely beautiful. So you've got the opportunity to visit both of those. But my favourite, if I had to visit anywhere, would be the Carlsberg Wall.
Yes, I'm sure it would be, eh? And then there's also great shopping. They've got Strøgade, which is one of the world's longest shopping streets. It's over a kilometre long, and you get your Louis Vuitton and your Prada, Glenn.
Nice.
Do try the local foods, Danish pastries of course, with the lovely cinnamon, and you've got the smallest board, which is traditional open-faced sandwiches that are gorgeous. And the other bit of advice we'd give you is invest in a Copenhagen card. It gives you unlimited free access by bus and rail for 24 hours, and it gives you complimentary admission to more than 70 different attractions and museums. And if you're travelling with kids who are younger than 10, 2 of them can get in for free with every adult. Destination 3, Stockholm, and I've got to admit this is probably my favourite. Huge fan, and your factoid, your Keithy factoid here is Stockholm's shortest day is just 6 hours of sunlight, whereas its longest, get this, is nearly 21 hours of sunlight.
Now, edge of your seat stuff on this, isn't it? Make sure you continue watching, we've got another 2 of them to come.
Now make sure you're up nice and early as the ship arrives, because the sailing's incredible, and you'll agree with me on this.
It is.
24,000 islands, many of them inhabited just by seabirds and these gorgeous kind of summer wooden homes. And you sail through navigating your way. It's absolutely magical. Now, Stockholm's situated on the central coast of eastern Sweden. It's built across 14 different islands. It's connected by 57 bridges, so hopping on a canal boat is a great way to explore. Now, highlights for you, Glenn.
There's a number. I mean, in the centre of town, we'll talk about that in a moment, is absolutely beautiful. But the 2 things I'd really recommend you do is, one's called the Vasa Museum. This was a 226-foot long warship, and literally what they did, it sailed out the harbour, they broke the bottle, and it sunk within about 3.5 minutes. So it wasn't the best designed ship, it was too heavy, but it sunk in the harbour. And then they discovered it hundreds and hundreds of years later, and what they've done is they've built the museum around the actual boat itself.
It's 95% original as well, 95% complete.
It's phenomenal. Something completely different is next door to it. They built about 3 years ago the ABBA Museum, but it's great to go in and see all the costumes. You've got all the gold discs, and you can actually go into the recording studio, the music's playing, and you can actually stand on stage in virtual reality with the Foresman sing.
And what about Gamla Stan, Ben?
West Ham are trying to sign him at the moment from Lazio. No chance.
By Gamla Stan, I mean the old town.
Oh, right, okay.
As well, you know.
It's beautiful. Yeah, as I said, you've got the places to visit. We talked about the museums, but a stunning old part of the town there. Again, to go around there, you've got the armoury, you've got the palace to walk around, and they really do sort of impose on the city as well. They're striking buildings and great opportunity to spend the time strolling around there. So there's plenty to do there, but make sure you're up in the morning and you're out on back deck in the evening when you sail out, because, as I said, the sailings now are one of the best in the world.
Okay, number 4 in our trip around the Baltics is probably the most exciting of all the ports, and certainly the one that people get really emotional over because of what you can do and what you can see, St. Petersburg. Now, funnily enough, the factoid, guess what? It had 3 different names. It hasn't always been St. Petersburg.
No!
Yeah.
Go on, tell me which ones there were.
It's also been Leningrad,
yeah,
and it's also been Petrograd.
Amazing.
I know, you like that. Well, it's full of UNESCO World Heritage sites, 36 different complexes, 4,000 outstanding monuments, and 221 different museums. Now, it was founded in 1703 by Peter the Great, and he based it on places like London and Paris and Vienna. Now, remember, you won't be able to get off unless you've got a Russian visa. And if you book a tour, that's all done for you, but if you're going independently, you need to apply for that yourself. But don't let that put you off, because you can do it. It is quite straightforward, and although it's a completely different language with the civic language, it's still a great place to explore.
We recommend people either do a private tour, we do them with Planet Cruise, or you do them through the ship, and it's all covered for you. Now again, with St. Petersburg, you may be there 2 or 3 days. If you're there 3 days, that's great, because it gives you more time to explore St. Petersburg. The 4 things I recommend that you do: you go to the Hermitage, which is obviously the largest art museum in the world. You go to the 2 palaces, which is Catherine's Palace and Peterhof Palace, and the other one is Church of the Spilled Blood. Now, however you want to do that, and they do incorporate other things like St. Isaac Cathedral and Peter and Paul Fortress, they're the 4 things that you really want to try and take in. But the palaces are magnificent. Peterhof Palace, especially the gardens, the gold fountains.
140 fountains.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And again, a good tour there is at the end is to go to the bottom of the gardens and pick up the hydrofoil, and that will take you back to pick up your coach down in the centre of St. Petersburg. It's a fantastic city, but you've got to get yourself planned what you want to do. In the evening as well, you've also got the opportunity to normally go to the folkloric show, or you can go to the ballet. Remember, you can't just walk off the ship and go and do your own thing. You have to be on tour to do that.
There are a couple of things you can do as well. There's a great Twilight River cruise that you can do down the River Neva, which is just off what's called the Nevsky Prospect, which is the main kind of shopping area. And if you do go to the Nevsky Prospect, that's great for shopping generally. It's still very good. You can get really good bargains in Russia, and money works out quite well, so it works out relatively cheap. And there's lots of great vodka bars around there as well, which you can try. But be warned, the Russian vodka is very strong, as both Glenn and I can attest to. This is Estonia we're going to talk about now. It's Tallinn. And interesting fact, it's the birthplace of Skype and Hotmail, and was the first country to use online political voting systems.
Yeah.
Have I impressed you?
Oh, what? Edge of the seat.
Now, the ship's dock at the Old City Harbour, which is 500 metres from the city centre, and that's the new town. Now, you mentioned before about the differences with the new town and the old town here, Glenn.
Yeah, I was. I mean, the old town of Estonia is absolutely, and Tallinn is absolutely stunning. It's all cobbled there as well. So people tend to use this as a nice, relaxing day. What you tend to find, there are tours there which do all the old town, but a lot of people just get off, go into the old town, walk around. There's great beer houses there, good food. All the locals are dressed up in the traditional costume as well, and they just take in the atmosphere of Tallinn itself. So,
but that's not a bad thing, Ben.
No,
because
it's not.
That's not a bad thing, because in a sense, it's probably of all the ports, this is the most. A, you're docked so close to where it's all happening, and B, it's very walkable and it's not too big because it's a walled city.
Yeah.
You know, and it does feel like the Brothers Grimm or Hans Christian Andersen are going to jump out at you at any moment, because it's got that kind of feel. That said, there is also a beach, so if you want to have that proper rest day before or after St. Petersburg, head out to the Parata district, and there's 2 kilometres there of beautiful beaches with views over the Baltic. Right, now we want to say thank you to lots of people who have been getting in touch. But before we do that, if people do want to get in touch, how do they do it, Glenn?
They can do it by Twitter, they can do Facebook, they can contact us at hello@planetcruise.co.uk, or they can obviously check out the website. We've got all the cruises on there for them, and the team are waiting here, myself and the rest of the guys, to answer any questions and queries.
And we want to say thank you to these people that have been in contact in the last week as well. So Andrew Jarvis, he said, just back from an amazing 14-night cruise to Scandinavia and the Baltics on Celebrity Eclipse. It was absolutely awesome. Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for getting in touch and sharing with us. And also Paul Beale, he says, Keith and Glenn, I doff my hats to you gents. The Regent Cruises Explorer show is a masterpiece.
Really?
Masterpiece. Okay, so thank you very much to those lovely people. And again, if you do want to get in touch, please do, and tell us what you want to see and hear. For myself and Glenn, have a wonderful week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys.